When we think about history, we tend to think about great men, right? But what about the women who raised them? Today, we're diving into the powerful and often completely untold stories of the invisible mothers who literally shaped our world. Okay, so think about this. Every single year, the world celebrates the birth of Martin Luther King Jr. It's a huge day of remembrance. But have you ever stopped to ask a really simple but profound question? Who else was in that room back in 1929? The author, Anna Malaika Tubbs, puts it so perfectly. She says it's as if somehow MLK Jr. birthed himself. And when you hear it like that, it sounds absurd, doesn't it? It's like we imagine these incredible figures just appeared out of thin air, completely ignoring the women who brought them into the world and shaped their entire lives. So let's get right into it. Section 1, we're calling this the invisible mother. And we're going to start with a really specific and honestly pretty glaring example of this whole erasure. So get this, if you actually go and tour the home where MLK Jr. was born, the guides focus almost entirely on him and his influential father. But his mother, Alberta King, she's barely a blip on the radar. And what's absolutely wild is that this was her childhood home first. She grew up there. It's the very place she gave birth. She's become a footnote in her own house. Now, this isn't just about Alberta King's story. It's part of a much bigger, much broader cultural pattern. And that brings us to Section 2, a culture of erasure. This really goes beyond one story. We're talking about a systemic issue. So how does this happen? Well, our culture has kind of built this narrative that just makes mothers invisible. They're often painted as these selfless beings, as if they don't have their own needs or dreams. If they stay at home, their incredible work is often belittled, seen as unproductive. And in the professional world, so many mothers feel like they have to hide the fact they even have children just to be taken seriously. And of course, when their loved ones succeed, the mothers who supported them every single day rarely get the credit they deserve. And look, this isn't just about hurt feelings or recognition. There is a straight line, a direct connection here. The stories we tell in our books, in our movies, in our culture, they directly impact how mothers are treated in the real world. If our whole narrative says they're unimportant, you can bet our policies will reflect that. And the consequences of that? They're devastating. When a society devalues mothering, what do you get? You get a country that doesn't have universal parental leave or affordable childcare. You get a rising maternal mortality crisis. And as we all saw so clearly during the pandemic, you get a system where mothers are the first ones forced out of the workforce. This isn't abstract. This erasure has tangible, damaging effect. To really understand this, we need to hear the stories that have been ignored for so long. So that's Section 3, 3 forgotten stories. It is time to restore their legacies. We're going to start back where we began. We all know the name Martin Luther King Jr. But how many of us know his mother, Alberta Williams King? Let me tell you, Alberta King was a force. From a young age, she was an activist, joining the NAACP with her parents. She earned a bachelor's degree and a teaching certificate, but was forced to quit her career when she got married, a common and deeply unjust rule back then. She was a gifted organizer and musician who instilled in all her children the belief that their faith and the fight for social justice were inseparable. And tragically, her life was cut short when she was murdered while playing the organ in her church. The pattern just keeps going. The world knows Malcolm X, a towering figure in the fight for Black liberation, but very few people know the story of his mother, Louise Langdon Little. Louise Little was a remarkable intellectual and activist. At just 17 years old, she traveled to Canada all by herself to spread the message of Black pride. She was a multilingual scholar, deeply involved in the Pan-African movement. But after her husband was murdered, her life was systematically dismantled. Welfare workers harassed her constantly, and then a white doctor had her institutionalized against her will for 25 years. In his reasoning, he claimed she was imagining being discriminated against. Her family was completely torn apart. And for our final story, we have the brilliant writer and thinker James Baldwin. And again, behind him stood a mother whose own story is one of incredible resilience, Bernice Jones Baldwin. Bernice Baldwin was a talented writer herself, someone who used her words to champion love over hate. She moved to New York right in the middle of the Harlem Renaissance. She had to endure an abusive marriage with no support system and worked as a domestic to provide for her family. After her husband died, she proudly raised 9 children all on her own. And I want to be really clear about this. These stories are not just historical tragedies. They represent the ongoing struggles that mothers, and especially Black mothers, continue to face. Disrespect, a lack of support, and systemic biases that are constantly pushing them to the margins. So if the problem is the story we tell, then the solution has to change it. That brings us to Section 4, how we change the narrative. This is our call to action. What if we just fundamentally reframed our language? Instead of celebrating mothers for being selfless and always putting themselves last, what if we started thanking them for being our first and most important leaders? And what if we finally recognized the immense, essential work done by stay-at-home mothers, instead of belittling their role as somehow less productive than other jobs? What if the skills honed through motherhood, we're talking incredible multitasking, organization, empathy, what if those were seen by employers not as a distraction, but as a massive professional asset? This is what it means to change the narrative. It means demanding more accurate portrayals of mothers in our media, because that can actually shift the culture. And a culture shift makes it so much easier to achieve real political change, like paid parental leave and affordable childcare. It really all comes down to these simple, undeniable truths. Mothers are essential. Mothers are powerful. And mothers are whole human beings with their own needs and their own identities, completely separate from their children. So this is it. It is time for our stories and for our policies to reflect the true value of mothers. We have the power to change the narrative. The only question is, will we?